Yes, good day, everyone. My name is Christian Sasse. I'm the Astronomer-in-charge for iTelescope, and I'm delighted to bring part 2 of the tutorial on the Large Magellanic Cloud to you today. So I'm just going to hide the floating meeting controls here. And if you open and I hope you can see the screen right now. Let me see. Can you see the screen? At the moment, I hope you can. Just let me know in the chat. So this is, if you open the Large Magellanic, yes, you can. Thank you very much. So if you open the Large Magellanic Cloud, it's incredible. So it's a satellite galaxy in the southern hemisphere. And what's remarkable about it is that the apparent size is 10 by 10 degrees. That's insane. If you look at the moon's diameter of only half a degree, what we're saying here is 20 moons by 20 moons. That's 400 moons it contains. That's insane. You know, it doesn't appear like that when you just look at this sort of cloudy structure there in a very good sky in the southern hemisphere, right? But it's absolutely remarkable. And that's also why we did this mosaic. And we took this image with T71. That's a very fast Newtonian. I have the same telescope, by the way, in my garage. I wish the weather was better. I hope it's better where you are. The same setup. It's super fast. You can see typical Newtonian setup, the cameras here on the side, right? And it's really fast, but it's a very, very fine lady in the sense that you have to be very careful with her, the way you treat her, because everything is very sensitive. Collimation is ridiculously crazy sensitive. Okay, that's what I can say from my experience. But when it runs, it's a beautiful telescope, right? And that's T71, so do have a try, do have a go with it. So having said that, I'm going to jump straight into Astro Pixel Processor, and today it's going to be more enjoyable. Last time was more technical, so today the link that I've given, or that you will also find below this video once it's published, gives you the integrated images of the Large Magellanic Cloud as we did it last time, only for all images, okay, for all images. So I have already placed the work directory where it is, and these are the 6 integrated images. So that is red, green, blue, and then the 3 narrowband filters, which is the oxygen, the ionized oxygen, the sulfur, and also the hydrogen alpha. So I say open, and that defines my work directory. I know there's some of you who don't know all the procedures. I will run this. I think you can still you'll be able to replicate what I'm doing today. It's not very difficult, but I won't go too much into technical details. We're going to jump straight into the processing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just untick, which I always do, the multiple session processing. I'm just looking at images, and I'm going to just call it LMC. That's what it is. Mosaic, right? That's what we're going to call. You can put whatever name you wish here. I'm going to click on lights, and I'm just going to load all of them. I'm running this, by the way, on an M2 Mac Pro, and whatever processor you have should be fine. But this is really heavy on the computational power, and that's why it is better when you have a faster laptop, typically from an M1 or faster, and if you have a Windows computer, you will have to go from an i7 to i9 and so on to really start processing these very heavy pixels that we have. Okay, so you're just asked, you want to load these integrations as a light frame, right? That's just the question. You just say yes. And here are all our integrated images. Let's just click on one of them, the blue, and take a look at what it actually looks like. This is the result from last week's session, only fully integrated. And that's what the blue filter looks like. You can see beautiful, really, the whole region of the Large Magellanic Cloud, distance about 170,000 light years, 20 billion stars, quite amazing. There's the tarantula, and you see 2070, really remarkable. You can see how it's stitched together, and that it's seamless. APP did a very nice job here. Let's quickly also look at the narrowband filters. Hydrogen alpha should be very rich because the Large Magellanic Cloud is full of of incredibly rich starburst regions. There, of course, absolutely outshining everything is the Tarantula Nebula again, and then you have very hot regions in there. It's so beautiful to image, really, the Large Magellanic Cloud. It's really one of the best southern jewels that there are. You can see all these different regions here. Let's look at oxygen too. Now, oxygen, of course, needs more ionization energy than hydrogen. And there again, completely outshining everything, you have the Tarantula Nebula and a few other reasons. So we expect a Tarantula Nebula to be very bright and all completely outshine the Large Magellanic Cloud. Also, let's have a quick look here at the sulfur region. And why am I doing this? Because it's very important that you get a feeling for how you're going to compose your image. And that's completely up to you, your creativity. But you can see the sulfur looks a little bit disappointing. Again, we can see parts of the Tarantula Nebula, but already I know the sulfur is not going to give us a lot of details, so I'm not going to pay too much attention when we put the composition together with sulfur. Having said that, we can now jump in and go to the tools bar and start making an RGB image. We will start initially with just the red, green, and blue, and later we're going to add the narrowband to it. The reason for doing that is it's very good to separate the broadband from the narrowband, because if you do that, you have much better control over the colors and your composition instead of putting everything together. That's my preferred way. So let's go. We just have RGB, so I'm just going to be more precise and just say RGB is what we're going to do. And I'm going to add the channels. It jumps back into our work directory. I'm just going to select now by pressing the Command key on my Mac or the Control key on your Windows computer, red, green, and then, sorry, that's blue, green, and red, and just open them. So we do that, we import them. It's going to assign the color channel to it. We just say yes to it. And here you have all the assigned channels, and now we can mix them into a color image. Before we do that, we just go to the right-hand side. This is our preview window. And I'm just going to enable saturation because I want to see some proper color the first time I run it. Also here you have the saturation slider. And again, this doesn't influence your image at all. It's only whatever we see here that we are doing. It's a preview, the truth. So I'm going to put up the saturation slightly, and the threshold, which is the background, I'm going to suppress that completely so all the colors come out. I'm going to leave the stretch. This is my histogram stretch. If my image is in the way, just shift me out of the way. The top right, you will see the histogram of what we're going to see. I go back to the left side and just press Recalculate. And here we just get the first preview of the Large Magellanic Cloud in RGB. And what I was saying is we can see some green, you can see a bit of the, you know, of the atmospheric green glow in here. And you do see color gradients because we're putting so many together. So we need to clean this up very carefully. And this is where broadband really comes in very nice in the tools of APP. So one more thing we can try, you see it's on RGB1 here. I'm going to switch to RGB2 and see what the color composition is there. So what I need to do, if I do that, in order to enable this action in RGB2, it doesn't do it by itself. Just click on New Formula, and then the sliders will move. And what you can see now is that the red channel, the blue channel here gets a bit of red and green, and the others too. So we're mixing the channels and seeing if that gives us a better composition. This is completely trial and error. I'm pressing Recalculate and just taking a look at it. And I really encourage you to experiment with this and choose whatever you think is best. Okay, that's interesting. It does look a little bit better, in my opinion. So you can choose either RGB1 or RGB2. In this case, I'm just going to choose RGB2. and leave it like that with the mixture. I like the color composition, so I'm just going to say save here. So it's going to save this as a linear fits file. And here you can see that it has remembered that it's RGB2. I just say OK, and then we leave this menu. It's now here in our it's in our image processing file, and it is a new image that we have created. With this, now we will clean it up. I'm going to double click on it, and that brings it back into the screen. Just expand the screen a bit. And now comes the most important part. We're going to clean up the image and try and get the colors correct. We do that by just clicking on Calibrate Star Colors. So that's directly what we do after the combine RGB channel. It asks us now, it says, well, if you want to define the star colors, we first have to clean up the background and remove the gradients. So we say OK to that. And that loads the image again into a new menu. So what it's going to ask us now is to say, hey, where's the background here of your image? And I will try and neutralize the background and take out all gradients. That's the main purpose of doing light pollution correction. In order to really see all the details, we go to the right-hand side and we will enhance the preview window as much as possible. Here is what we call the screen stretch. So I'm going to the screen stretch and maximizing it completely, right? I want to see all the details, all the mistakes that it has made. And at the same time, I'm now going to pull up the saturation. You see that lever here, the slider all the way up. So we're completely oversaturating and overexposing this preview window to see all the details. It takes a bit of time to load, but it's doing that. And now we see what's going on. So now comes the puzzle. How on earth do we tackle this? And if you have downloaded, if you've managed to download, it doesn't matter. My tutorial notes of where I put these areas, I have in the notes, so you don't need to worry about how I'm doing this at the moment. But what I usually look out for is I'm going to try and put some areas. Let me just put some areas where it's dark. Okay, so I'm going to try and put one here in the beginning. You see that there? I'm going to look here. I'm just looking at my notes here. Oh, you can zoom in and zoom out with your mouse very easily, sometimes too easily. 1 second. Let me just get this right again. Okay, now I'm overdoing it somehow. My mouse is too sensitive. Okay, I'm going to put one here in the corner. Then I'm definitely going to put one here. And you see there's a bit of a dark area here if you look carefully. And then I'm going to put another one right up here. Yeah. You see, make them as small as possible, not large. Make these samples small and try not to include stars. So we've now got 6 areas selected, and now I'm going to do a calculation. You see where it says recalculate? It's now going to say, wait, if these regions are all of similar intensity, are supposed to be of similar background, then I need to do a background subtraction, which it's going to do from our image now in order to neutralize the background, right? That's quite a heavy calculation that we're asking here. It's often a trial and error. I get this wrong very often, but this is probably the single most important step that you're going to do in Astro Pixel Processor, and where, in my opinion, this program completely outshines everything else, because you have such beautiful control. And look at the result that we've got. It's quite amazing how much this has improved. And so we can just add a few more. Isn't it nice? Isn't it? It really is. So I'm just going to include a few more points here. I'm just looking at my notes here. And you could leave it now and say, you know what, I'm happy. This is good. It looks fine for me, and that's good. That's good. Let me just see if I got any other ones. I'm just distributing them more or less the way I can see them in my notes. Let's try this. Recalculate. And this is really sensitive, the way you do this. Sometimes I encourage you to do this 2 or 3 times to really find the best composition, right? There's no formula for this. It is also why this hasn't been automated. This is really also an artistic judgment that you're putting into this, the way you like the composition. So now it's doing very heavy computation. So let's just give it a moment. Right, and you can see how it has evened out a lot of the areas. Here's a little bit of a red mark. So let's do one more iteration here. So the red just means there's a very strong background gradient. I need help. Tell me where else you can find something. I'm just going to see there. Let's put one here. Let's see where else we have. Maybe in this region here, this has a little bit of a gradient too. Okay, and one more here, and I think then I've got, yeah, here could be a little bit of a dark region. Right, let's leave it like that. Do one more calculation, and then we'll jump out of this. Isn't it impressive, Jean-Pierre? It is. And John, it is. It's remarkable. I really think that APP does an amazing job here. What I hope in future is going to be added is similar to what we have in PixInsight, by the way, that you can store the the background, and you can continue, because very often I find myself saying, you come later to the image and say, ooh, I still have a gradient in here. I wish I'd done a better job in APP. So if I could just jump back and or I could just pass you on this memory, because if you take more images, or you think that that map is the map that I need, wouldn't it be great? And that looks great. That really looks great. So I'm going to say I'm happy with that. You see, you say OK and save. It saves it in a linear form now and gives you the amendment of LPG, light pollution correction, and correction of background. I just say, OK, we're done with that. And said, fine, you've done with it. Now we can look for star colors. So I'm just going to look at my notes, scroll one forward, and now comes the question, where do we put our star colors? This is not an easy question, because you're calibrating, or actually I would call it an artistic calibration of how red, blue, or so the regions are. So you need to find some darker regions here. So I'm going to put one here, and this is really a bit of guesswork in the very dark areas as much as I can. Right there. You could put another one there, but I'm going to choose these 3 areas, and fingers crossed, I'm going to say recalculate now. So it's now taking a sample of the stars in the background, plotting them and saying, well, if those are really not part of the Large Magellanic Cloud, which probably is not true, but if they're part of our own Milky Way, then the distribution would be as follows, and we should get mostly red stars, and then 15–20%, something like that, blue stars. These plots I won't go into, but that's what it means. And you can see we got a beautiful correction here. You can see now the Tarantula Nebula is really coming out beautifully, isn't it? And you can see even this region here has come up. So this is why these 2 steps are just so important, to get these right before you do any further processing, because you cannot correct this later anymore, right? So just really take good care. Very nice, we say. Thank you very much. Now we can let's just take a little bit out of this and also desaturate it a bit, because of course this is the problem when you do image processing, because your eyes get so used to it, and you can see it's completely oversaturated. So I'm going to take this down quite a bit to somewhere around 20, which is going to look a little bit, well, fade or so, but don't worry about that. You can always saturate back, but you cannot unsaturate an oversaturated image, just like you cannot undo an overexposed image. So let's leave it like that. It looks nice. I just say okay and save. Very nice. And you can see it's now got the correction of star colors on there, right? So that's our next. We get this going, we say you're done. And here are our new corrected images, right? They're down there in our folder now. And now comes the exciting part. We're going to add narrowband. So we go and do the cycle the second time. I'm pressing combined RGB again. Now you say, why is Christian doing that? You could combine them all, but if you've got color gradients in there, especially in broadband, you need to correct them first before you combine things. Otherwise, it gets very difficult, right? Maybe with galaxies, if you have H alpha, you can afford to do that. But when you have nebulae where you have all the color mixtures, it's better to do the step separately. So we do round number 2. And this time I'm going to choose, because we got the RGB image already, we're going to choose the mixture of RGB and HSO. You see that? We got HOO, HSO. I told you before that sulfur is not that great on this. So I'm not going to put too much emphasis on sulfur, but the hydrogen and oxygen look really exciting. Now, one other thing that's important is we have scaled the image already. That means we have the exact proportion, and we did that by the star color correction of red, green, and blue, because we don't want the program to rescale. So very important, put this to none. Otherwise, you get crazy colors. If I put the normalization to none, it's not normalizing it. It's going to import my RGB as I did it. It's really important. And then we mix in the other ones, and that's where it really gets an artistic touch now, because we're going to mix these in and we're going to find the right coloration. And that's really artistic. It depends on how you want to interpret things, because when you start mixing narrowband with broadband, it has very little to do with reality and everything to do with art, with your artistic creativity. Right, so I'm going to say add channel again, and we're going to go right back here. You see, that's the one that we just created. And now I'm pressing down my command key or my control key if you want, and I'm going to import these 3 in addition to that. So we are going to split up the RGB image back into its primary colors, right? So we chose this as a map. We are saying it's composed of red, green, and blue into its primary colors. And then we have H alpha, it recognizes it, O3, and it also recognizes S2. So we have all 6 filters in here. And we're going to just click here on Recalculate and have a look and see what we get. And this is always a very interesting experiment when you do this the first time, because it doesn't always look that great, and it doesn't. So you say, oh my God, what went wrong? We had such a beautiful image before, but don't worry. Just, this is exactly where you could do beautiful corrections with APP, right? It looks like, my God, somebody's re-spilled the paint bucket here in magenta all over, and that's exactly what has happened. So how do we correct this? So we have this formula, and first let's see what the formula has actually done. So the formula has correctly put red, green, and blue the way it should be. Now hydrogen is very red. Hydrogen alpha is a very red line. So yes, it's kept the hydrogen alpha line the way it's supposed to be. Oxygen is actually between blue and green. It's a mixture of both. So I see it's given it mainly blue. Now my personal touch, and you're very welcome to try that, is to put about 25% green. I find that gives a beautiful blue to start off with. That's what I usually do. So I try and put the natural colors of oxygen back between blue and green, and I find that gives just the right blue touch if you put about 25% green here. Now sulfur is way off. So it's put green to sulfur, and that's what's giving this lousy color here. So we're going to now move away from that and give sulfur the color it is supposed to have, which is deep red. So I'm just going to go and put the green slider back and the red on full, and then let's recalculate and see if this looks any better. And this is very important, just for you to experiment here. Right, that looks a lot better, doesn't it? That does look a lot better. You can see we still have magenta, which we can correct later. It's definitely not as nice as our original image, but you can see the tarantula nebula is coming out very beautifully in blue now. Now, this is where I also encourage you to experiment completely to your own taste. What's very nice about narrowband is to try and really pull them out, away from the RGB. So in this case, what I've done, here's the multiplier, how much you want. In general, I don't recommend you to play with the background. The background slider is very sensitive, right? The background looks okay, and we can correct any green haze later. But where you can really change the slider, and that depends completely on your taste, I'm going to put the oxygen double. I'm going to give it double the emphasis to really pull it out now. So I'm using my right arrow key to put it exactly on the number 2, so it's easier to remember. Give me a second. And then I've also put sulfur, I'm leaving at 1 because it's a little bit fade. And hydrogen, I'm going to put on 1.5. Again, these are arbitrary numbers. You may find better combinations, but I've just done a bit of experimenting. Let's just pull this up a bit more and then pull it back again. So I get it exactly on 1.5 so that you have a reference here. Oops, that was a bit too far. And then I do recalculate here, right? Okay, and that's where we are. So yes, it's true that there is still too much magenta in there, but this is easy to correct. What we have now is that we have some beautiful regions here. And also in the Magellanic Cloud, we have some very beautiful regions. And because we've mixed narrowband, we do lose a lot of the color touch. We can correct that later in any artistic way you want to. But I think this is fine. We're going to save this now. So I'm just going to say save again on the right-hand side. Now, in order to remember what we've done, especially when you've done it later, I like to give this the emphasis. So RGB, we've given the multiplier of 1. Hydrogen, I gave the multiplier of 1.5. So I'm going to put there 1, and I can't put a point into the file name descriptor. So I'm going to put a P there, 1P5, 1.5 for hydrogen. Sulfur, I just did once, and then oxygen, we did a 2. That way, when you come back later, you will remember the slider positions. But at the moment, there's unfortunately no way of logging what you do in APP. So that's a very simple way of logging it. So I'm saying, okay, and it's done it. Great. Now, there's one more thing here. Let's just put this very bright. And this is a small other tip. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, it's not doing it at the moment. I'm just going to say cancel. And I'm now going to go into remove light pollution. So I'm going to call up the last image again. You see, I'm just double clicking on it. And now I want to just correct any color gradients that I may have. And sometimes it does work. And I think in this case, it did work. That's why I'm doing it. So you can see there's a green haze, which I really don't like. It's come back somehow. I've really stretched the image at the moment. You can also get the saturation right back to really be sure, because it's very important that you export a very clean color image as much as possible into any post-processing that we're going to do. So you see the green haze. So how do we get rid of this? So I'm just going to look at my notes very quickly. We are now going to say remove light pollution on this, and says, do you want to do the one in the current window? Yes. So we are doing iteration number 2 here too, and trying to see if we can correct this, okay? So in this case, I'm just going to take some samples again. So it's waiting again. I'm going to put one sample here, which I consider the background. And then put one here and here. So you can see we've got a bit of red and green, we've got some gradients in there. 1, 2, try one more here maybe. Okay. And let's do the recalculation here and see what happens now. Hydrogen's magenta. Yes, that's right, Robert. Yes. Okay. Okay, that's quite good. So you can see that has definitely disappeared. That's much better. And we do have quite a distribution of hydrogen and oxygen there. Now I'm going to go to the stretch and just lower the stretch quite a lot. And also going to pull down the saturation so I don't forget this to about 0.2, because we can always, as I said later, we can, you can always go back, right? And this is what we're left with, and we can correct this, right? So we got we did quite a lot with the image, and we've got a lot of details out that are quite good. Okay, fine. So I'm going to just say okay and save on here. And you can see that's the final image that we have. Great, so we are basically finished with Astro Pixel Processor. Now I'm going to show you two simple techniques of how we can clean up this image very effectively. I'm going to use Lightroom in the first case because Lightroom is very popular, and you may have some other software, and the other one is Viveza. Both of them are very effective, simple tools for cleaning up this image and getting a lot out of it, right? So we actually finished with quite a difficult part in Astro Pixel Processor, and now comes a more fun part. So let's start with Lightroom first. Now, before I go to Lightroom, I just want to go back to, this is my Mac. I'm just going to go back to my folder, my image, so I don't lose my image, because I'm going to mark it so I can easily find it. Because, okay, I see what I've done. I have not yet exported my images. I have forgotten. Okay, we first need to export our image. I'm sorry. Now that's good. That I remember. So we only have the FITS files. What I'm missing is I have to export it as a TIFF file. Let's do that now. So I'm going to re-click on this final image that we had here. Just re-click on it and make sure that's the last one that we did. That is the light pollution correction that we did. And we're going to export this, of course, which we have to do, right? Because at the moment, it's only in there as a linear image. So how do we do it? We just say save. You see, save on the right-hand side now is going to save it as a stretched TIFF 16-bit image. That's what we're after, right? We got to do that, of course. And we're going to save the RGB image too, because it's good to have it, because you can play with these later. So there you go. You see, it's going to save it as a TIFF file. I'm just going to say okay, of course. And then we'll do the same for the RGB image. So we're just going to wait until it's done. It's quite a big file, right? It's done. And then you see back here, we have the calibrated star colors for the RGB. And very often it's good to have both of them. So we save both images as a TIFF file. And again, this is a stretched image now, okay, that we're exporting it at. Contrary to having a FITS file. So that's our final image. I'm also going to save that. And you can see quite a low stretch that I'm having on here. I always like to understretch rather than overstretch, because the details are already very visible and we shouldn't do too much. Okay, so there you go. I'm also going to say okay, right? So it's good I actually checked the file, because of course we need to export first as a TIFF file. Now that has been done, we can go back. I'm just going to go back into my Finder here, and there they are. You see, so I've got this one image here, and that is my RGB image. And this one here, you see, this is the one that we did. That was the HOO image. I'm just going to tag this with yellow so that I will be able to find it very easily, right? Especially for the tutorial. So we're going to work on this one that we've done. That's the broadband and narrowband together. And this you can do yourself and blend it and do other things with it, right? Great. So let's jump straight into Lightroom. Now, Lightroom is involved in a very wonderful way, I must say. Like many of these, they're finally becoming user-friendly. And that's what I really want to reveal to you, is the joy of astrophotography imaging. It should be fun. It should be fun and easy to do, right? And With Lightroom, you can do a lot. So the first thing we have to do is just import it. The interface is very simple to understand. Everything is explanatory now in Lightroom. So all you just have to do is file. You're going to add your new photo. Let's do that. And we're jumping, I already jump in the right direction. You see, I marked it with yellow so that I know what I'm doing. And I say review for import. So it first asks you to review it. And I say, I know what it looks like. I would like to add my photo. And there you go. And immediately on the right-hand side, this opens. You see that here? This is your editing window. Makes it really simple. Makes it really simple. Okay. So Robert says he recommends Capture One. There are so many good softwares. They are all similar. Whatever you like is fine. It doesn't matter, right? It's just, I'm just showing Lightroom because it's very well known. Okay, fine. So let's get right to it. The first thing I usually look at is the temperature. I don't like the temperature of this. So that's really the color. So here you can see immediately shifting this a little bit to the yellow gets a tremendous correction, right? And the other one you can try and very carefully is the tint. The tint is getting this a little bit more to the red or, you know, magenta or whatever, just trying to correct the colors a little bit. Vibrance and saturation, the difference between vibrance and saturation is quite interesting. Saturation will saturate everything linear, but vibrance, it does it in a nonlinear way. It will emphasize those parts that are emphasized less as compared to the background and others. So I like to often use vibrance, and you can see that's doing a very nice job here, right? So you can see that's great. Now, what's also very nice about Lightroom, it's got these color corrections, which are really quite marvelous. So if you want to use these, this is for the midtones. The midtones is typically the middle here of the galaxy. The highlights, that would be the Tarantula Nebula, and then the shadows would typically be your background. So you can correct these colors individually, which is really nice. Okay, so if you, for example, want to give the Tarantula Nebula a little bit more blue, that's what I'm doing, and pull it. You see, here's the color wheel. I can pull it over and just give it the right touch of blue, which is really nice. So that's the Tarantula Nebula taken care of. If you want the midtones to be taken care of, you just click on anywhere. You see now, of course, it's far too blue, right? But you can shift this wheel around and just find the right, you know, the right combination where you are, and you can give it, here's the intensity of it. See that? Isn't that nice? Makes it so easy. Just with very simple levers, we've got a lot of the hydrogen content now popping out there. And then the shadows is more for the background. If it's too green or so, you can adjust the shadows there. Just be careful with the shadows. You see that? That's nice. So you can adjust that. Now we got a little bit too much blue there. You see that? So we cut the blue back. You've got to be really careful with these levers, because sometimes they just don't. You see, I've overdone it now. I've overdone it. Yeah, that came, the shadows. Wait a minute, this one came out. Let me just do this better. You've got to be careful that you don't overdo this. I think I've messed it up. You know what? I have just messed it up. I don't know where the reset is. I would like to reset it. You know what? Where is my reset? Somewhere is my reset. I've actually overdone it. That's typical what happens in a live broadcast. I would balance on the background. Yes, I know. There are a lot of things you can do, but at the moment, I'm just trying to reset the color balance, and I cannot find where it is. Double click on the slider. Yes, that could be. Let me try that. Let me double click on the slider. You may just be right. You're right. And I'm going to slide this back in the middle because I've just overdone it. You're right. Let's just put this right back where it was. I think that's more or less what it was. Yes. Yes. Okay, we've got it back. But you see, you got to be really careful with this slider. So I'm not going to do too much of it now. Let's just continue. Texture is very nice. That gives you a bit more structure. Then you've got the clarity here too. You put a bit of clarity in it. Dehaze, be careful with it, right? Vignetting, you don't really need. Grain, you definitely don't need. Sharpening, be careful with sharpening this because it's a nebula. Noise reduction, definitely yes, and color noise reduction, yes, you can put those up too. Now there is a very nice way also in, so play around with the color wheel. I'm not going to do it now because I don't want to waste your time. But what you can do, which is very nice, you've got these menus here, and the one that I really like also is masking. You see that where it says masking? Let's click on masking because, for example, if I find the tarantula just too bright and I want to influence it, we can do that. So we do that with a mask, okay? So I'm taking the brush, not subject or sky, it doesn't know what we're talking about because we have a galaxy. I'm going to click on brush here, and I'm just going to brush. You see that I'm making this all red? See that? So I would like to make this, take the highlights back from the tarantula nebula. So I've done that. It's masked it now, and I just slide down, and you can go now to the highlights, which I'm looking for. Here it is, the highlights. And you see that it's going back. That's a lot better, isn't it? See that? Much, much better. We've got the highlights back, and you can also put a little bit more saturation in, which I'm going to look for. Okay, all the menus are different. Let me just find the saturation. Here it is. Here is the saturation. Okay, and you can just gently go with the saturation, and that takes care of the tarantula nebula. That's a lot better. What you can also do is you can highlight this a little bit and that region and so on. So you just put another mask. You see where it says a plus sign? Just click on the plus sign, go to the brush, and let's say we want to just emphasize the whole, this whole region here, which I'm doing now. I'm painting over this as a mask, right? And maybe a little bit of that sideline too. And I just would like to, so I've got this regions now, nicely masked out. Make sure that your feathering is very wide for the mask. You see, I've got very wide feathering. You can change all the all the brush sizes and everything here, but I choose the widest possible feathering. And then let's see if we can just get up a little bit of brightness or so. In this case, let's pull up. In this case, let's try the shadows a bit. See, that brings out the shadows a bit. That's much better, isn't it? Very nice. And then if you like, you can even change the color temperature here a bit. If you find you want a tiny touch maybe of blue in there, you could do that, right? Just a tiny touch and so on. So, don't overdo it, right? But you can see how beautifully easy this has been. And finally, if you're finished with this, click back on the main menu. This gives you the global influence. And let's just do the final thing, just a bit more contrast here, right? So give the image a bit more contrast. And you can do more corrections if you wish to, the white balance, but I won't do that. I'm just going to say I'm happy with this now, and I would like to export this. And you're very welcome to correct this further. So I just go File, and you say Export. So I'm going to export this, and it's going to give us some menu options here. And then we're going to do the same with Viveza. It's just another tool that is also very effective, right? So we go here, and you can say here, export one photo. Yes, that's what I would like to do. And there you go. I don't see a file name here. I'm always a bit I don't know where the file name is because I don't want to write it over. But it's saved as a TIFF file, in my case, 16-bit, which is fine. So let's leave it at that. So the others are TIFF. It's just a convention difference that, it's basically the same. They're all TIFF files, right? So I'm just going to export this, and it will do that. It will do that. And let me just check if it's there already. I'm going back here to my, yes, it has done it. You see here it is at the TIFF. Here it is. Okay, so we're going to go back to Lightroom now, and then we're going to close Lightroom. Great. And the other tool I wanted to show you is Viveza, also very nice. I've introduced this to you before, but it does the same way, only it gives you a little bit more options than we had with Lightroom. It helps you a little bit more. Again, file, open. I'm going to go and open and go back. Here's my yellow marked TIFF file, so that we're using the same. And what's very nice about Viveza, it gives you different options here on the side, so you can do some creative thinking, say, oh, I like this one. You see, that's a nice one. Warm it up a bit. That's in the right direction. That's what we did in the other. So the global sliders are immediately adjusted, right? It's giving it a lot more warmth and so on. And then you can say, ooh, you know, that looks a little bit too bright. So if you take the highlights back, but it's taking the highlights back everywhere, so maybe that's not the right way of doing it. It's definitely increased the midtones, which is very nice. So what you can do here is similar to what you did in Adobe with masking, only this is even easier to use. You have control points. You see that? You have control points. I just click on the control points, and that goes from the local to the global control now. Let me just click on it, make sure. And let's click on the Tarantula Nebula before, right? So you can click here on the radius and so on of your influence, and it's got automatic feathering built into it. So in order to access not the global controls, but the local controls, you can now scroll down beneath the control points, and that gives you further access to new controls. So it's different to Adobe. Adobe has it all in one, whilst Viveza is separating the global controls from the local controls by you scrolling a bit lower, right? Yes, Sikanda, we are going to, I forgot to do that. Thank you for reminding. We'll jump back into Lightroom and we'll crop the image. I forgot that. Thanks for reminding me. You can definitely do that, and I will show that. I forgot to do that. Thanks. We will do that in a sec. Great. Okay, so if you want to take down the highlights a bit, I'm going to do that. You see that? And there we go. You see the highlights go immediately down. So we fixed that very nicely. And you can do exactly the same. You can bring up the saturation a little bit. And if you want to bring these regions up, that's exactly the same that we've done. Click on control points again, just like masking. And we can expand this a bit. And now you can go and scroll down again to the local points here, and you can bring up the midtones a bit, because it's midtones that we're talking about. Just do it gently, because sometimes this program's a little bit slow. You can move it. No, it's not doing anything. That's weird. Let's try the shadows. Ah, now it suddenly reacts like crazy. Yeah, you've got to be careful here. Let's leave it like this. So if you want to replicate the settings of this point to others, and maybe you're going to bring in a little bit of structure here, to bring in a bit more structure in the galaxy itself, you can do that, maybe bring up the saturation a bit and so on. You can now replicate the settings, and you do that by holding down in the Mac, just the Option key or the Alt key in the Windows. Just hold it down, and it now duplicates your point. You see that I'm duplicating, and now suddenly, oh my God, it's become too bright. But that's not a problem. What we're going to do now is we're going to group all of these points together, and we're going to regulate that together. So the way I do it, you see, I'm selecting only these points all. I held down my mouse, and I selected all of them except for this point, of course. I'm grouping them together, going back here, and you can see here where my control point is. I can click here on this button here, and that groups them all into one. And that gives me this is like masking the whole galaxy, right? And I can pull down the midtones a bit. Again, just do this gently. Seems to be a little bit slow for some reason. I'm not sure why. Come on. Yes, it is reacting now. Ah, it's through my structure, of course. Bring the structure a little bit. Let's see what happens. Oh yeah, it's the structure that's doing that. Great. So you can find the right balance there. And again, with warmth, you can change the look a bit of the galaxy, how much how much oxygen and how much hydrogen you would like in there. Let's make this a touch bluer in contrast, right? There you go. And you can see the effects are immediately visible. It also becomes very nice. Now, Sikandar was asking about cropping. I don't think, Sikandar, that cropping is possible in Viveza. You might have to do it outside, but let's just jump back to Lightroom and do the final crop there. So I'm just going to say File, Save Image As, and it goes right back. I would also like it as a TIFF file. Now here I can amend the name, which is very nice. So I don't want it to be overwritten. So I'm just going to write, oops, no, I didn't do that right. Let me just do this again. File, Save Image As, and here we go again. I'm just trying to get rid of that. Yes, there we go. Okay, so the stretch, I'm going to amend this with Viveza 3, so we know what we've done. Okay, and then I won't do it as a JPEG, I'll do it as a TIFF file too. And then let's do the final step, and then we crop it, and my goodness, we have done the whole image in 2 different ways. And you're welcome to go on further improving it. So I'm just waiting, and yeah, it takes a bit of time. Gives us a break. Very dark on your side. Well, it depends really on your screen. You have to be very careful, John, the way your screen is, because it gives a completely wrong impression otherwise. So if you see things too dark, it can be the calibration of your screen and all kinds of other things, right? So it depends. And John, to your point, I often go away, I take a coffee break, and then I come back and say, oh, this is terrible. And that's normal, because your eyes are so, you adapt your eyes so quickly, and very often I come back and then I play a lot with the contrast and brightness again. So just to bear in mind, these things can always be improved, and very often just take a break and come back then. And because I'm doing this live, it's much, much more difficult, of course. So let's jump back into Lightroom, just to Sikandar's point. And here we are right back in Lightroom. And what we should do now is crop the image. So I'm just going to hide the meeting controls again so I can get there 1 second. There we go. So let's crop this. And you see, here's the crop. I forgot to do this. Very easy in Lightroom, okay? So I'm going to just, I'm just doing the size, so you can adjust the size, the aspect ratio. You can leave it as the original, or you can choose any aspect ratios you like. In general, I don't recommend to do custom because it's worse for printing. Just take one of the presets. I'm leaving it in the original, which is really nice. Okay, so I'm going to turn this now. You can see you can turn the image, and you can really optimize this in any way you want to, right? So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, like this. Be careful that you don't take the edges along. Maybe take a little bit less here, like this. Okay, let's leave it like this. And then I'm just going to double click on it, and there you're done, right? So there's your cropped image. Now, you see, for example, I don't like the temperature here. I'm going to change the temperature again a bit. That's so typical to do this, or to change, to now try again the color grading. I'm not going to touch this because I know I'm probably going to mess this up in a live demonstration, but play around with the color wheels, and I'm sure you can get an even much better image than what I'm doing here in a live broadcast, right? So I'm just going to say here, export again. Let's do that again. And then we have it nicely cropped. You think it looks great. That's nice. What is the image behind me? Okay, I'll let you guess. Sikandar's asking, what is the image behind me? Can anybody guess what it is? It's a great question, Sikandar. Thanks for the question. I'm going to export. And so we're just going to overwrite this, I guess. Right, let's do that. It's just doing that. Okay, great. And so we are finished. And I'm just going to see if I can stop the screen share. Right. So Sikandar's asking, what is that image behind me? Does anybody know what this is? And it's going to be something marvelous because, yes, it's a region of the Vela supernova remnant. Good, John. Yes, Vela, that's it. So very soon in iTelescope, coming, well, it's also going to be during the masterclass, Sikanda, you're going to love this. We're going to put together the whole region of the Vela supernova remnant. That's one of the highlights I've got for you. A beautiful mosaic. And it's also going to be for premium images, by the way. So this is called Pupis-A, P-O-P-P-I-S, and then a big A. That's the region. It's so artistic, isn't it? So the blue regions are the oxygen regions, and the red ones are the hydrogens. It's just incredible. Yes, Sikana, it's going to be so exciting. So this is going to be also part of your image set coming up sort of from the 12th of April onwards that I've prepared for you all. And you're going to have the whole region. It's insane of the supernova Vela remnant. It's just marvelous. And this is a part that was taken with a 24-inch telescope, which we can also do during the master classes. The nice thing of doing these master classes where we can really get sort of almost the Salvador Dali out of the sky. You know, that's what makes imaging so incredible. Anyway, on that note, I'm just going to stop the recording.